Hey everybody, today is March 26th. We'll be looking at MTG stocks March 25th. As you can see, there are not very many price increases, and there's not like there's a huge amount of price decreases. This is kind of more average, I'd say. Like, generally, this is about how many we'd see. There isn't like any huge big price decreases. I mean, I guess you could potentially say like 18% is pretty decent as a price decrease. That's Silence. It's one of those cards that I think was like $1 not too long ago, and then it's kind of like slowly risen up. I always thought it was a good card, and I guess it rose up, and now it's kind of dead, dying, something. But this is probably just due to general economy issues right now, but we'll get into that. And as you can see, like the weekly stuff, we have some price increase. I think some of these price increases were actually kind of already showing on last week, so it's kind of interesting to see some of these. I know like Test of Endurance we saw, and I think Vivid Marsh. We were really go to Vivid Marsh just because it's a land card, but and then some price decreases, and a lot of these are still kind of referring to some of it's affected by the ban list, and then some of it's just in general the mystery booster stuff. Mystery booster stuff did a lot of decreases on stuff, I'd say. So let's go ahead and get into our first card of the night, which is Eureka. Eureka went from 358.45 to 386.94. So this is a reserved list card, so that's why it's so expensive in general. But first off, I guess let's read the card a little bit first, and we'll talk about it. So Eureka costs 2 colorless, 2 green, and it's a sorcery. And the old text version says, both players may take any permanent in their hand and put it directly into play. Players take turns playing 1 card from their hand until neither wants to play more permanents. No other spells or effects of any kind may be used while Eureka is in effect. If a spell has an X in its casting cost, X is 0. So that's the old text. I mean, you can kind of get what it's saying. Like, it kind of makes sense. I think the new text version's pretty clean. So here's the MTGO kind of version of it. We're going to get in the art a little bit soon, but the updated text is, starting with you, each player may put a permanent card from their hand onto the battlefield. Repeat this process until no one puts a card onto the battlefield. That's a lot easier to understand. Basically, let's say you put a creature down, the other person can either say, I'm not going to put anything down, or they could be like, okay, well, I'm going to put this down. Then it goes back to you in a two-player game. In a two-player game, it go back to you, and then they'd be like, okay, well, I'm going to put this down, and the other person decide, basically, the next person that goes on that line just decides. And Commander, it's kind of neat because you play it, then you put something down, then the next player may be like, okay, well, I'll put something down, and the player after that may be like, okay, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and just end the chain here and say no more permanents on the field. Yeah, it's a neat card. I mean, it's kind of like, I love the old text. It's just like, all right, sure, you probably didn't need to say that much, but I feel like, I don't know when X cost came into play, but this was probably around the time that it did. They're probably just trying to be like, all right, we need to explain this a little bit so people don't have to read rules, and that probably helped people out a little bit. But so if we look at the Magic Online promo art here, it's like there's a bear, there's I guess that's a horse. I'm not really sure. Then you have someone that's like, in the middle of all this, like, oh wow, I have an epiphany. But it's like, okay, sure, whatever. I guess it's kind of nice looking. Whatever. Don't care about that art. But when we look at the old art, gosh, that's awesome. So first off, these have a wizard in like a generic wizard costume, which doesn't really make. I mean, I know green is technically as a planeswalker, you're technically casting this spell, and I guess you are technically a mage and whatever, but you don't really think of like traditional wizardy garb on a green card. You probably think more of like blue in that sense. And then you have this guy that he looks like a skeleton to me. I thought he was a skeleton, but I assume he's not actually. But he looks like a skeleton with a mane of hair around him, the happiest expression you can imagine, and he gets a little sprite slash something that it just appeared out of nowhere and says equals MC squared. I mean, how could you not love this art? That's why I like this art. I'm a fan of it. I like these kind of goofy arts. Especially like in the old times, they would do like these really goofy, whether it be intentional or not. I feel like this one was supposed to be goofy, but regardless, I really like it. It's fun to see these old things like that. Anyways, let's go ahead to the next card. So this is Steel Enchantment. Steel Enchantment went from 123 to 549. And this one's kind of weird because, well, first off, this seems to be an uncommon card. And as you can see, it looks like a common card, but these old kind of cards did that. I think, unless they bumped up the rarity, because I forget which sets did it. Like I feel like Tempest did this, where they just were like, oh yeah, everything's just the same color rarity, because whatever. But I think, but otherwise they just bumped up the rarity arbitrarily. Anyways, so Steel Enchantment is a blue enchant aura. Enchantment, you control enchanted enchantment. Alright, so basically, put it on any enchantment, you control it. Easy enough. I tried to look around for why this card rose up in price, but I couldn't really find a definitive reason. The only thing I could think of, because I've seen a lot of old cards do this, where maybe someone will buy them out or something, and basically, since it's been the only print of it, and it's a very old printed card, it then turns into like, oh, there's just not enough out there, and then it just kind of rises up in price, because probably someone bought it out just for giggles, or trying to get, you know, like, that money. But, because this reminds me of, so there's a card called Genesis, and Genesis is I think its casting cost doesn't matter. I think it costs about 5 converted mana cost, and he's a green card. But when he's in your graveyard, you can pay 2 colorless and a green at the beginning of your upkeep, and if you do, you get to bring back a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So basically, it's a way to continuously get creature cards back from your graveyard. It's not a bad card. I don't know if it's a great card though. Even in Commander, sometimes I'm like, I've tried to put this in graveyard decks, and I'm like, I really want to put a slot in for it, but it feels like a trap, because when you have to pay 3 mana at the beginning of your upkeep, you're preventing yourself from doing a lot of other things, especially if you're trying to draw cards for answers. Regardless, that card was about $7 or $8. And then when Modern Horizons was reprinted Genesis, he suddenly went down to like 30 to 50 cents, and he never like really rose back up. That's just because like he's an interesting card and he fits in certain decks, but I think it was just because it was such an old card and it was never been reprinted before. People probably bought it up, or just not enough out there in general, and then he just rises up to that price. And that could just be kind of the deal with Steel Enchantment. Now, aside from that rant, kind of the cool thing about Steel Enchantment, which I wish I knew about this card before it spiked, but hopefully it'll get a reprint sometime soon, is that this is like one of the few ways that you can actually deal with enchantments, and especially mono blue, but other decks that can't deal with enchantment. Like Grixis, like red doesn't deal well with enchantments, black doesn't deal well with enchantments, blue doesn't deal well with enchantments. So this is like one of the few ways to basically get rid of their enchantment. Now it's not always I'm trying to think, like if you're against specifically an enchantment deck, it may not do you a lot. It may be like one of those enchantments that are like whenever you play an enchantment, draw a card or something like that. But regardless, it's just getting it out of their possession. So even if you never play another enchantment, it's basically like destroying it until they destroy your Steel Enchantment, if they have a chance. Which, if they're playing enchantments, they probably do, because they're probably have white and green in it and blah blah blah. But anyways, pretty neat card to put in there as a way to get rid of enchantments as a blue player. Let's go ahead and go to our next card. which is Test of Endurance. Test of Endurance went from $13.19 to $27.99. Pretty big price increase, and I think even the week before it kept rising up too. And I tried looking this one up as well, but I couldn't really find much either. I'm still kind of going by the same deal, is that it's just one of those cards that never been reprinted. It's probably just gone up in price. People are buying it out. But let's go ahead and read what it actually does. Test of Endurance, 2 colorless, 2 white, enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you have 50 or more life, you win the game. So it's just an alternate win condition, and you can kind of compare this to Felidar Sovereign, which is basically kind of like the same thing, but a creature instead. The difference is that first off, Felidar Sovereign's been reprinted a lot. Second, Test of Endurance is enchantment, so it's generally harder to get rid of unless you have still enchantment. But it's generally hard to get rid of, and it costs I think it costs 2 less than Felidar Sovereign, so you can get it out even quicker. Now you do have to have more life because this one's 50 compared to 40, but I think those are probably the main reasons why it is spiking. It's just with I think, I don't know if this actually has anything to do with it, but the new white god card that came out in Theros Beyond Death, I think it's Heliod, it probably presented more life gain decks, and probably people are more like, oh, life gain, let's get Test of Endurance, and they probably just bought it, and then people kept buying it. So I don't know if that's an actual reason. I assume there's not an actual reason in like Legacy or something like that, but I would assume it has to be EDH related. But anyways, let's go to our next card. So this one is Splinter Twin. Splinter Twin went from $13.43 to $9.26, and I think you can maybe find it cheaper here and there depending. But Splinter Twin is a 2 colorless red enchantment aura. Enchanted creature has tap. Create a token that's a copy of this creature, except it has haste. Exile that token at the beginning of the next end step. So this is really good just because, well, first off, it just gives you a way to, I'm sure there's a lot of infinite combos you can do with this. But additionally, just like, I'm trying to think of, because you're creating a token that's a copy of this creature. Someone's got to tell me on this, but I don't know if it actually enters the battlefield. I'd want to assume that copy enters the battlefield. But if it does, then you have really scary stuff like Zendikar or Avenger of Zendikar. Like I use that card quite a bit, but he's a spooky boy for enter the battlefield effects. Regardless, if it doesn't enter the battlefield effects, which I'm pretty sure it does, you still have things where you could just get a big trampler even and just make a trampler so that your actual creature doesn't get in harm's way. But I'm sure there's a huge amount of variety on this card. I think it also just for aggro decks in general, it's pretty good. But what's interesting is potentially why this card is kind of decreasing. And so it's not because it was banned. It's been banned for, I don't know, 4 years or so. But the reason why it is going down in price is there was allegedly a rumor. I don't know. I just kind of saw this, but allegedly there's a rumor, and people are saying that Splinter Twin will be unbanned. Now, I looked into this a little bit more, and apparently it's kind of a meme that Splinter Twin will always be unbanned because Splinter Twin, like, it basically kind of created a rift in Modern, and it was like, it made you focus on, if you weren't a counter deck, Splinter Twin basically destroyed you, and so you had to kind of like decide on how to play against it. And I don't know. Apparently, it made the meta good or bad. I think what people are saying is good, allegedly. I don't know. I don't know enough about Modern, but that's kind of the idea. Is that Splinter Twin basically made it to where you weren't in a, because like apparently, I have to keep using apparently because I don't follow this enough. But apparently, Modern is like pretty much a crapshoot what you fight against, and you can pretty much just lose immediately based on deck type. But Splinter Twin kind of like that deck archetype made it to where people had to really choose, I guess, or something. I don't know. It seems like to me if it was dominating the meta that much, it'd be bad. So maybe I just read that wrong. But anyways, so the reason why this card decreased is because people were buying it up because they heard a rumor that Splinter Twin was going to be unbanned. And then they got bought up. And then they didn't get unbanned because March 9th was when the recent unbanning was. And people are like, oh, that's not good. And so they're selling it off now. And that's the alleged thing that I kind of read around about. I think it's interesting, but you know, it's kind of weird to see how this kind of stuff manifests in general. Anyways, off of that tangent, let's go ahead and go into our commander of the night, which is Varina Lich Queen. Varina Lich Queen is an Esper commander. It costs 1 colorless, white, blue, black, and that's a legendary creature zombie wizard. Whenever you attack with 1 or more zombies, draw that many cards, then discard that many cards. You gain that much life. Then she has another ability, 2 colorless, exile 2 cards from your graveyard. Create a tapped 2/2 black zombie creature token. So basically there's a lot of cool things you can do with this. It turns into like a self-milling kind of deck. You could probably use something like Labman or whatever, you know, those kind of win conditions, and it's probably not a bad idea just to have that win condition. But what's really neat is that usually when you think of like dredge decks, you're gonna go immediately to Golgari because Golgari does dredge very well, or Jund does it well because it has Golgari in it. But Esper is not really one you think of as a graveyard deck much, I don't think. It could be more popular than I think. Usually, I always think of Esper as Super Control or Life Increase or Flicker or something like that. But I like this one because it basically presents you an aggro deck. And what's cool about the aggro deck is that you have ways to make zombie tokens with this commander, and you also have ways to not so much have card advantage, but you can cycle through your cards a little bit easier. And you get a little bit of life, which that's not the main thing. And but what it allows you to do is put a whole bunch of cards in your graveyard, and you can use that to your advantage a lot. There's a lot of cards that have Delve or whatever else, and of course you can play cards from your graveyard using something like Animate Dead, something cheap like that. So it's kind of neat to see that. And of course, if you're just going full zombies, you can just get a lot of good zombies and push them out, and it's really cool. But the random card of the night is pertaining to Varina, and it's pretty cool. I like it a lot. It's been reprinted, so luckily it's gone down in price. But it allows Varina's ability to really shine. This is Alhamuret's Archive. Good thing I know how to say that word. But Alhamuret's Archive is a 5 colorless legendary artifact. If you would gain life, you gain twice that much life instead. So it's, with Varina, it allows you to have, if you attack with 3 zombies, you gain 3 life, and now you gain 6 life. But the big thing about this card is if you would draw a card, except for the first one you draw on each of your draw steps, draw 2 cards instead. So this is a replacement effect, and I looked it up, and it actually doubles the amount that you get. So what's interesting about Varina's effect here is that if you attack with 3 zombies, you will instead draw 6 cards. And if you're wondering about the other texts on there, it says something about like discarding that many. That many refers specifically to the number of zombies that you attacked with, not the number of cards you drew. So you would attack with 3 zombies, you'd draw 6 cards, and then you'd discard 3 cards. So this is like a super, super good card. And since it's been reprinted, I think it's about a $15 card, and now it's dropped to about $5-ish. So really cool card, especially for that deck. I like this card in a lot of decks. I put this in a lot more decks if I could. I mean, $5 is a little bit more reasonable right now, and it may keep going down. I don't know. But super, super cool card, especially in Varina. So let's go and end off our night, as always, with a couple of random cards. So random card number 1. That's not even a card. That's just a token. Lorwyn, Goblin Rogue token. Sure. All right, let's go ahead and get random card number 1. Go, go, go. Oh gosh, this is not going good. All right, we got a mountain. Random card number 1. I'll take it. Canyon Wildcat. Canyon Wildcat is a 1 colorless red 2/1 creature cat. It has Mountain Walk. Mountain Walk, if defending player controls a mountain, it can't be blocked basically. So unblockable if they control a mountain. I think the walk, all the land walk abilities are basically considered obsolete, as in they're not supposed to make them anymore, allegedly. I don't know if that's what they said, but I think unblockable is just easier to print. But I've never liked super specific things like Swamp Walk, Mountain Walk, just because it's like if none of your opponents have it, then it kind of defeats the purpose of that card. So I don't know. I don't know if I've ever liked them or not, just because it works. I have a mono blue Merfolk deck, and it works a little bit better in there because there's enough blue cards that allow you to actually make things islands or turn things into islands, that it works well for that kind of synergy. But in general, it's kind of a crapshoot. So, actually got our first card of the night. Let's go to our second random card of the night, which is Hooded Brawler. Hooded Brawler is a 2 colorless green creature Naga Warrior, and it's a 3/2. You may exert Hooded Brawler as it attacks. When you do, it gets +2/+2 until end of turn. So exert is a mechanic where it won't untap during your next untap step. It's usually a pretty bad downside, but the upsides can be good. This one's not particularly great. I mean, getting +2/+2, the only thing I can think of, if it prevents lethal, maybe that +2/+2 could give you that lethal that you need. This would probably be okay in a draft, because a 3-mana 3/2 is okay, but being able to make it a 5/4 when you need it to be, maybe not too bad. The exert mechanic's kind of neat. I think it would probably work really well if you have blue or something where you have a lot of things that let you untap. But yeah, I kind of like it, but I think you need to abuse it a little bit better. This card's not great with it, but whatever. It's random cards. What can you do? Anyways, hope you all enjoyed for the night. Hope you have a good one. I'll see you next time.